Welcome on in to Friday the 13th, and yes, the day before Valentine's Day as well. You know, it's interesting, Joan, just kind of looking at some of the local news out there.
Yeah.
So apparently the Metro City Council has now come out and they have put in a resolution to ask the head of the NES to resign.
Yeah.
So is there anybody that thinks that that's actually going to happen? It seems, just to be honest, it seems kind of silly to me because she's not going to resign.
Yeah. I
mean, if she was going to resign, I would think anyway that she would have done it now. But what's the details on the story?
So I would love to tell you that I know, but I've been, driving in a car.
You've been driving in the car? Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and
I think you know more than I do, actually.
I'll go ahead and give the details of the story.
Good.
So basically, Metro City Council, they have filed now a resolution, a non-binding resolution, by the way, for the removal of the CEO of Nashville Electric Service after January's winter storm left nearly 250,000 customers without power. But it's a non-binding resolution. So I get that they are sending a message to NES that they believe that they should step down, that she should step down. But I think it's clear that they're not going to be. She won't be stepping down. The entire board is clearly not going to step down. But Teresa Broyles-Applin, is it Applin or Applin?
Applin.
It's Applin. I've heard it both ways. So the only people that can fire her, of course, as everyone knows at this point, is the board, and they're not going to do it. So you had Courtney Johnston was one, and Emily Benedict, both members asking the NES board to remove her, the public utilities top-ranking official. Benedict, whose East Nashville district saw widespread outages, addressed the NES board earlier this week. And she said this isn't about the linemen's effort. She said during the Tuesday meeting, this is about whether they were given the tools to succeed, the linemen. When a third of a district is without power for 2 weeks, that's not what residents call a good response. The resolution itself does not require action, but formally urges the board to consider removing the CEO.
They have to remove the whole board. But further on that Emily Benedict, what I'm seeing anyway, is that she said that she was wondering if inaction by Metro could lead to state intervention and calling it a failure of leadership, of course. So then maybe this sort of opens the door for the state to step in and say, okay, out with you. Let's get somebody else in here.
I mean, somebody's got to do something.
Yeah.
Like this whole notion, and I get so frustrated because the no accountability BS that we've seen in this city with Adrian Battle and the Metro School Board, and nobody can fire her but the school board, and the school board is terrified of her, even though she's cost the school district millions of dollars in lawsuits, all of that stuff. And now this here with NES.
If Mayor O'Connell had a spine instead of a noodle back there,
yes,
I think that this would happen, but it's not.
Bold of you to assume he even has a noodle.
Mayor Freddie O'Connell said last week, and I don't want to think about a noodle and Freddie O'Connell. Thank you, though. Mayor Freddie O'Connell said last week that he does not have unilateral authority. You know what? I wonder if there's an argument that he does. Like, all I keep hearing from the mayor's office is that he does not have unilateral authority to remove either the NES board or its CEO, noting that responsibility ultimately falls to the Metro Council. So Freddie is saying the Metro Council has the authority. The Metro Council is telling the board to remove her. And I don't know if anybody knows really who has ultimate authority. I've got to tell you, the state legislature, obviously, and we spoke to Jack Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson, a week ago now, I think. And they're all looking at who ultimately has responsibility to make a decision on this. But, you know, it's clear, and I've said this before, and people actually literally laughed at me, Joan.
Yeah.
You would think that if you're the CEO, if you are Teresa Broyles-Applin, You would think that nobody wants you here.
Yeah.
So step aside and let the adults take action. I mean, that's what I would say. And so now we have, I mean, the governor has had his piece on this, I believe. Wet Noodle O'Connell has had said his piece on this, not really making much of a decision or taking a stand on this. The conservative state legislature, hopefully they will be able to step in, but I think they're just trying to figure all of this out. But, my worry is that, should we start calling Freddie O'Connell Wet Noodle Freddie?
Oh, I like that.
Does that have like a ring to it?
It does.
Wet Noodle Freddie? Okay, so we'll call him Wet Noodle Freddie. So anyway, the mayor, he's clearly not wanting to take a stand. And so now the question is, there's a number of things here. But do you think that they've learned anything? Do you think that the Metro City Council, because remember, it's the Metro Council who approves these board members. And in talking to these folks, I mean, they're never really sold on some of these board members. And so they may have voted for these people, but they didn't really... they're like, I'm way outvoted anyway, so go ahead and vote for them or whatever. But I wonder if they're going to start looking at these board members now and looking at the people that are in charge of NES, and they're going to take an extra look at their resume. And they're going to say, okay, you know what? We actually need somebody. We are was it the 11th largest electrical service in the country?
Oh, wow.
I think we're 11th largest. I seem to have heard that. And so we need somebody who had actual experience at working with electrical grids and so forth. And this, Teresa Broyles-Applin did not. In radio, and Joan, you and I both know this, in radio, at least it used to be this way, you pay your dues in a smaller market.
Yeah.
And then you work your way up into a bigger market. So you mean to tell me that there's not, some person who works in a smaller city somewhere, but they've got a grid, and it's a grid that is maybe perhaps, I don't know, like our grid, but they've got grid experience. And they've got experience in trying to, preserve power when storms come in. You mean to tell me that person wouldn't want to move to Nashville, Tennessee, wouldn't want to come to a bigger city and have more responsibility? I read somewhere, she's got a $300,000 a year job.
Yes.
You mean to tell me that there's nobody with actual experience in dealing with, grids and public utilities that couldn't come in and clean house and figure out how to keep the power on?
So in just the last 4 years, the customer base has grown by almost 60,000.
Okay.
But they knew that. So if they knew that, they should have been working on how to make the system resilient to things like this. I just feel like this incident has helped the rats to find a new way to get their cheese. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're realizing now who their friends are. So they'll go to this person to be protected, and they'll make this maneuver to keep hold of their jobs instead of doing the right thing, instead of realizing that, hey, I did wrong here. The effort is always going to be deflect.
Have we gotten to how much it cost?
To get the power back on?
Apparently the estimate, the recovery efforts cost approximately $140 million.
Yeah, but those trees were sure nice, weren't they?
Oh, they're so pretty.
The tree canopy.
They smell terrible when they bloom. Bradford pears, I'm talking to you.
Mother Nature took care of the canopy, didn't she? So, yeah, for me, I mean, waiting 6 months or 9 months or a year for the whether it's NES to finish their investigation into themselves, Metro City Council, the governor's not the governor's office, the mayor's office. I would actually like the governor to take a look at what the heck happened. I don't know if he's got his own investigation going on. I haven't heard that he does, but I really would, if I could implore our friends at the state legislature to try to somehow take more control over NES. I think we would all be safer for it. I thank you for that, Joan,
Yeah.
because I do believe that it will more than likely go wrong as well, because that's the way that our day has been going here on Nashville's Morning News and Super Talk 99.7 WTN. All right, we got a lot of stuff going on. We were talking about what is happening in Minnesota. I want to go back to, real quickly, Stephen Miller. Everybody knows Stephen Miller. Everybody loves Stephen Miller, at least if you're on the conservative side of the aisle. So he was on with Sean Hannity last night, and got some audio here. He was on with Sean Hannity last night because I was talking about with Jonathan Fahey. A lot of people believe that this was a failed mission in Minnesota. The Trump administration is trying to convince folks that no, it was not a failed mission. It was actually a success. Stephen Miller, of course, is out there saying, no, this was good.
The corrupt Attorney General, Keith Ellison, in Minnesota, issued an edict unlawfully requiring, all jails and prisons in the state to shield, harbor, and conceal criminally illegal aliens from ICE. And so with this agreement, those jails and those prisons are no longer going to obey the unlawful edict issued by Keith Ellison. Instead, they're going to follow federal law, the supreme law of the land, and hand over those criminally illegal aliens.
I mean, obviously, we got a situation in Minnesota where we have, in my opinion, we have seen some success. If you go to the YouTube page and you watch Nashville's Morning News, and you can see us all in our disarray this morning, take the Daily Dan poll, and you tell me, do you feel that our mission in Minnesota was a failure or a success? Because, again, personally, I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you folks that it was a success. You've got your own opinions. But me, I think that the Trump administration does have a lot to be proud of. But I also believe that it was time to move on. I also believe that. Caitlin Collins, I want to play this for you. This is really funny. Joan, you'll especially guffaw at this.
Oh, yeah. I saw this.
Well, there's a couple of different things regarding Caitlin Collins. In this particular audio soundbite, she is claiming that she and CNN are not anti-Donald Trump. You ready? Listen to this.
They always argue the media is biased against them and doesn't cover them fairly, even though we cover them, I think, fairly and accurately.
You know what's so funny? She actually, if you listen to how she says that, it almost sounds like she says inaccurately.
Yes.
She actually says and accurately.
Yeah.
But it sounds like she sort of muddied her words.
They always argue the media is biased against them and doesn't cover them fairly, even though we cover them, I think, fairly and accurately.
You really? Do you know what I wonder? This may or may not be appropriate, Joan, but I'm just going to go ahead and do it because it's been one of those days.
Yeah.
You ever been around somebody that smells really bad?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they don't smell their own BO? Mm-hmm. That's what this is.
You want the focus to be on the subject matter and not on you personally as a reporter. And so
how many times have they said that, Donald Trump is like Adolf Hitler? How many times have they?
It's not countable.
Yeah, over and over again.
Yeah.
So I don't know what in the world she's talking about.
I always try to, keep that distance in terms of that. And I think keeping your composure in that point is important because you never want to prove them right on that front. That they are right, that you're biased against them, or that you have a personal, angst here. I don't.
Can you remind me, Joan, Jim Acosta? He worked for CNN, did he not?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he sure did.
Jim Acosta, they gave him a promotion.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I for whatever reason, this seems to be like an ongoing theme now in whatever show I'm doing, wherever I'm doing it. The Democrats and the media, they don't even care about the truth anymore. Do they? Like, they're willing to say or do anything to try to get more power or retain power. And they're willing to lie to do it. I mean, we saw that during the Biden administration with the border is closed, the border is secure, all of that stuff. And this is this morning's latest example of the Democrats willing to say or do anything to try to retain any shred of credibility, which clearly, in my opinion anyway, they don't have a shred of credibility. But you know what? Caitlin Collins, a nice try. 722 on Super Talk
Hold
99.
on, there's one more example that happened this morning.
Oh, okay,
that
go ahead.
I'm just fuming about, and I'm not going to play it for you because it would be very obvious who it is that said this. But this anchor said, and it's a local anchor, that this government shutdown that's coming at midnight tonight would be the third time the government was shut down during the Trump administration, and that this time we know that immigration enforcement is to blame. Those were her words, standing in front of the camera. Immigration enforcement is to blame.
We could play it.
You think?
Well, they're on TV. Yeah, you can play it. Go ahead. Well, wait, no, we can't right now. Well, shoot. I'm going to very quickly go ahead.
Okay, ready?
Now, this would be the third lapse in money during President Trump's second term. We know this time immigration enforcement is to blame.
I mean, honestly, they say it with a straight face.
It's the Democrats who are to blame because they're the ones that are choosing to shut down DHS because they want to put restrictions on ICE and DHS and
They
so
want them
forth.
to be doxxed
They
and
want
to
them
be
to be
further
doxxed. They
harassed and threatened in their homes along with their families.
They want them to be unmasked. They want them to show ID so that, the crazies out there will know exactly how to find them. So, see, that's the thing that drives me nuts about news, generally speaking, and certainly local news, is that, and this is what I love about what I do, is we can give the proper context on talk radio and not just, a little 30-second soundbite where they give absolutely no proper context to the stories that are going on. Anyway, 724 on Super Talk 99.7. As far as the news at 7th, news you can trust with Joan Jones. Iran is always going to be something that we talk about, and want to welcome on into the program from the Heritage Foundation, Brent Sadler. Always great to have you on. Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu meeting this week, and it's all about Iran. So I want to get into this because they're talking about Iran's nuclear capabilities, which, I mean, I know that Trump was able to obliterate, as the president says, their nuclear capabilities months ago. But now you've got Israel and the president really negotiating over what the president can do with Iran. Can you shed some light on what's going on?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm not sure it's really a negotiation between, Israel and the United States as to, what we're going to do. I think it's more along the lines of coordinating and sharing information so that the same sight picture. But the mullahs in Tehran, what they're doing right now is they're trying to buy for time through the negotiations, is talk a lot, give a little, if anything, and try and run the clock to our midterm elections, completely distract everyone here.
That's really interesting. And as I'm reading through all of this, part of my question is, how far has Iran been able to progress towards having nuclear capabilities again? Are they trying to rebuild the infrastructure that, the president was able to, as he said, obliterate?
I think there's every indication of that. From the satellite images, they've put tarps and coverings so that satellites can't see directly into the extent at which they're excavating and trying to recover what was destroyed, or at least what's salvageable of the highly enriched uranium that they do have. Certainly they were set back quite severely, but what's not changed is their intent to get that nuclear weapon.
One of the things that I find interesting about Iran, of course, is that we know what we did to them militarily, and we also know that Iran has had a lot of issues over the past couple of months. We had the massive protests, Donald Trump, of course, threatening Iran and telling the protesters essentially that he had their back. And we do, I believe, still have some military capabilities in the region. So I've found it interesting that Iran continues to talk tough, knowing what we're capable of militarily.
Well, I think the the regime in Tehran knows that after killing upwards of 30,000 of their own citizens, they've crossed a line which they can't return against. And I think the people of Iran see the regime as much of an enemy as any other. And so they're in a corner. They know that if they show any weakness at this stage, it's very likely that their whole regime will unravel. I think the military forces that the president continue to build up. I mean, the announcement, it's not a surprise that he's going to send another carrier strike group. Which one he picked, the Ford, that's been down in the Caribbean for many months going after the drug runners and supporting the operation against Maduro, is interesting. But the military force that's being built up is not to do the exact type of strikes that were done to go after a very precise few sites in the nuclear weapons program of Iran. This appears to be much more robust and to provide the president a whole wider range of sustained military operations.
One of the things that I have found interesting in reading about all of this, Israel has long called, and this is from the Associated Press, Israel has long called for Iran to cease all uranium enrichment, dial back its ballistic missile program, and cut ties to militant groups across the region. Is that something, even if Iran agreed to that, I mean, can you trust them to actually stand by their word? How do you verify that Iran is not doing or going back to funding terrorism?
Yeah, that's the rub. I mean, the regime in Tehran could agree to all that and then not change its behavior, which means that Israel, United States, and our Middle Eastern partners are going to still have to confront and aggressively go after all of Iran's proxies as it continues to try to rebuild its network. Right now, those networks, that Iran's proxies throughout the region, are really weakened, and Iran's ability to resupply them is also severely attrited. So it's really a negotiation that we already have what we want, but it's going to be really hard to enforce. I mean, the bigger one is the insistence from the president that Iran stop killing the protesters. And so the other news that's good and worthwhile is the Starlinks that have been sent in or snuck into Iran hopefully gives us better insight as to what's happening in Iran, so there can be a judgment as to whether or not Iran, the regime, is acting in a very illegal ways on top of everything else.
Well, I mean, you just said it. Brent Sadler joining us from the Heritage Foundation, talking about Iran, President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu meeting for the seventh time this week. But one of the things is, I mean, there seems to be no doubt that there were 20, 30,000 protesters that were killed. And so President Trump is told Iran in no uncertain terms, don't do that. And they keep doing it. So I guess the question is, they're going to keep doing it. They're not going to listen to President Trump. They're going to keep doing it. Is it reasonable to think that they would stop doing that, even though they seem to be thumbing their nose at President Trump at every turn?
Yeah, I mean, I think the bigger issue here is, will the United States will strike Iran? And I think the odds of that are very, very high for all the reasons. This regime's nature is not to change and cannot sanction making the types of concessions that are required to prevent that. Because in some respects, like, don't kill your protesters, which right now is very widespread to sentiment against the regime. There's no indication the protests have started up again, but that's not to say the Iranian people aren't seething. And so, yeah, if we don't follow through, it'd be very similar to the President Obama's red line after the Assad regime used chemical weapons against their own people and did nothing. Yep. It incited an even more aggressive and more, decade-long civil war. We could see a similar type of setting back of American interest if we're not careful on how this proceeds.
It's going to be really interesting. I've got a couple more questions for you regarding sanctions and some other things. And, if the current leadership in Iran ultimately ends up as taken out one way or another, who is going to fill that void? Iran's economy. How is it doing? I keep hearing that it's in tatters. You tell me, how bad is it, and how can we use that to our advantage?
Yes, I mean, the regime really relies on proceeds from, illicit networks, but really from the trade in energy, even though their ability to produce, it's also, like Venezuela, been reducing over years. So going after the dark fleet, the tankers, that's one way to try to isolate them. The other is to continue to sanction and prevent them from getting the type of investment and capital and repair of that infrastructure of their refining and their production capacity for energy. That definitely sets them back. But again, I think what really is good to see is increasingly sanctions and designation of, like, the IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, that's involved in a lot of nefarious actions outside of Iran, and also killed many of those protesters by many of our allies in Western Europe that have been, very silent in the past, if not willing to deal with this regime, perhaps to our own detriment of self-interest. So there seems to be a gathering momentum of applying pressure, and that now is the time to give the push against the regime such that the Iranian people have the space to get a government that's responsible for them.
Do the Iranian people feel let down because the Trump administration said, help is coming and we've got your back and some of these other things, and then ultimately nothing happened?
I think that sentiment's out there. You get it from some of the messages that come outside of Iran, and you can't say it's very understandable. But again, the reality is this is a choice for the Iranian people. They have to want to change this regime, and it's one that, should they rise up, hopefully there's a possibility of giving them the type of support that will help them take their country back. But again, it's a very delicate thing. If you come in too hard, it can look like it's an American intervention trying to take over Iran, and that will alienate the movement against the regime and probably diminish it. The other side is if you do nothing, then you alienate and you create resentment amongst those that would be your likely allies in a new Iranian regime. At the same time, you've made it very likely that the mullahs who stay in power will continue and probably be emboldened to do even more aggressive things. So it's a Goldilocks syndrome. You've got to get it just right. And having those aircraft carrier strike groups it's just the right type of weapon and tool. You can use it like a scalpel, and you can use it when the president decides, not with the veto or the knowledge of anyone else in the region. And while many in the region want us and don't like that regime and want us to help push the regime's toppling, again, they're not quite ready for us to be operating out of their countries yet, like Qatar.
Brent, let me ask you this question. This is a little deeper. So you've got the mullahs, right? How many of these guys have to go in order to get a new regime in or a new government in? Because from what I understand in Iran, you've got the mullahs and then you've got like mayors of the little regions around Iran as well. How difficult is it going to be if we go down this road to extract that government?
Yeah, so I think the 1979 revolution in Iran is the best kind of analog to this. It's very different than what's happening in Venezuela. Venezuela has in living memory had a functioning democracy. And so it's in living memory. They have a constitution that's largely the main points are still there. So allowing the Venezuelan people to use their constitution, again, with the pressure from the United States, that's still playing out. There's not the same kind of dynamic in Iran. So the people of Iran are going to have to rise up. They're going to have to take back cities. They're going to have to topple the regime because this regime, theocratic dictatorship as it is rotten to the core. Yeah. It is all designed to promote a very narrow interest group for supposed theocratic purposes, but it's not what they're about.
So let's say that somehow we are able to, or the Iranian people are able to do what they need to do and extract this government that is currently running Iran. Who is waiting in the wings? I know that there's a number of different groups that are there that we could end up with a situation where you've got all these different groups warring. Yes,
this is history has got lots of examples of this. China went through this in the early 1900s when their democratic experiment faltered for a long time. Now they got a communist regime that has as a result. In the case of Iran, I think the most important thing is that the United States not pick winners and losers amongst the opposition forces in Iran, but to basically support the effort and also make sure that the Iranian people get to choose and that there isn't, a new dictatorship that comes in place, maybe one better than the mullahs, but one also just as brittle and also prone to being toppled because it's suppressing too many of its own people. It's going to be messy for sure. But at the end of the day, what we've got right now with the mullahs is one that's willing to attack and kill Americans with lots of American blood on their hands. the key thing is to make sure that as the Iranian people stand up, is like they'll only get our support if they're looking for a better future, a peaceful one and a prosperous one, and they don't view the United States as an enemy.
Brent, always great to talk to you folks at the Heritage Foundation. Have a great weekend and a terrific perspective, and we'll talk again soon. 7:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Dan Mandis here. Friday across Middle Tennessee. And Joan, just really quickly, I don't know if I have time to do this now. Did I see that inflation numbers are out?
Inflation numbers are out. Yeah, that's part of the upcoming stories here.
Can you spare me the next 9 minutes and just tell me what the inflation did?
Okay. So the numbers came in great.
Yes.
It's 2.4% hike in consumer prices. That's a year-over-year number, and that was for last month. It's better than economists were expecting.
I like the headline on CNN.
Yeah.
Where inflation has cooled to 2.4%.